Thank you. Let's get into just looking at the use cases. I know that you guys have already touched a little bit about the different use cases. But let's look at the projects that you guys have worked on. Just give a sense to the listeners. What exactly have you been able to do with the different clients? And what kind of impact or benefits have you been able to see as clients have taken on RPA as part of their digital transformation journey?
Thanks, Sarah. I'll take this one. So, you know, I want to start with the fact that obviously automation is not limited to a specific industry or functional role. It is definitely something that can be deployed across many different organizations and types, you know, whether it's different vertical markets that we're looking at, like healthcare or banking and finance or insurance, or it really is, you know, automation can be deployed across all of those different industries. So not limited to a specific industry. And even if we look within different types of organizations, the different functional roles can also be automated. So whether we're looking within the finance department or within sales and marketing or operations or HR or IT, there's many different processes that can be automated across these. I'd say a very large majority of the projects that we start working on, you know, and this is almost the generalization, if we want to call it that, it very often starts in the finance department, purely because, you know, there's very clear rules in the finance department for their processes. So whether we're talking about a record to report or accounts payable or accounts receivable or taxation or treasury, reconciliations and reporting, you know, these things have very clear business rules that apply to them, and the business case is easy enough to stack up for these as well. So we can say, you know, if we have 400 suppliers that we work with, and we can then measure what the time it takes for a accounts payable clerk to process a invoice, we can then build a business case then to say, if we take that manual process of uploading invoices, capturing the information from them, and then uploading that information into the ERP system and ultimately getting it through the approvals and extracting that for payment. You know, it takes a accounts payable clerk maybe 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever the case might be per record. And if we automate this, we can bring that down significantly and show X number of saving in terms of the time we give back to that accounts payable person, that they can spend on something more you know, more beneficial to the customer, to that organization's top line or bottom line, or their customer service, for instance. So the net effect of this is that we want to take this manual and repetitive process, for instance, in finance, that we can take care of, you know, moving information around between different ERP systems and applying very simple business rules to it. So yeah, in finance, I'd say I've called out some of the major ones. Typically, I'd say a lot of the projects actually start in the finance. But what we also then see is, once, you know, there's success in finance department, at an executive level, you know, organizations, the executive would talk in board meetings, for instance, or in their meetings, you know, IT operations meetings, and that then starts spreading through the organization, as mentioned, into, for instance, the sales and marketing, procurement, operations, asset management, etc. So these would be some of the use cases. Within the finance function itself, I'd say a very, very large majority of the projects that we get to start on would normally touch on accounts payable. But there's a very clear use case for it. Typically, we find that, you know, the kind of value and efficiency that we can drive within that accounts payable process, you can stack up a good business case. Some of the benefits that we see with customers is that, you know, we can typically drive a 30% cost saving, at least a 30% cost saving in that process. And if we take, for instance, a very large organization, you can build a, you can stack up a business case just on the accounts payable. But as soon as you start adding a few more use cases, so maybe, it's accounts payable with maybe some reconciliations, we find that the return on investment and the payback for the software and the deployment of this project typically is between, I'd say, 8 to 9 months, 10 months at most, where the software or the savings that you see pays back for the software and the deployment. So it can drive very significant return on investment if we start adding some. The second year, a portion of the cost is actually for building and deploying this in year one. As soon as you get into year two, you don't have that cost. So now the process is running. Maybe there's a little bit of maintenance that you need in order to, make tweaks to the process or adjust the process. But in year two, you don't have the cost of the deployment. So your return on investment just keeps growing in year two. And the idea is that you keep adding more and more of these processes, which just keeps driving up that return on investment over time.
Fantastic. Do you guys want to speak to some use cases within the public sector? I know that Automation Anywhere has worked with, some of the public sector where, you've actually done quite amazing things. When you think of, even unearthing corruption where there's been human intervention. Once you take away that human intervention and, the robots are the ones that are doing the processes, that you've been able to, save money on behalf of the client. Do you just want to speak to that a little bit? Tine, I know, you've spoken to that before in one of the presentations that we've done. Do you just want to, touch a bit on that?
Thanks, Sarah. So yes, that's quite correct. So RPA can also help with things like compliance, in the sense that sometimes when human beings are doing some tasks manually, they can manipulate the data, and in the end, it can result in some financial loss. So what was happening in one of the municipalities, people would, after someone has resigned, they would change the banking details on the interim file before it gets processed. And then eventually those people wouldn't be taken off the payroll, and then the payments would continue going to some people within the organization who were benefiting from that. So when we introduced RPA, we took away that manual touch point. So after the file has been processed, there is no way for a human being to then go and manipulate the banking details. And also the offboarding of those employees, to make sure that when someone leaves the organization, they are not just offboarded from the IT systems, but also from HR and payroll systems, so that they can no longer get paid whilst they've already left the organization. And also things like retaining company assets. Using a bot, you can also track things like whether the person has complied with their offboarding process, whether they've returned the laptop, whether they have paid off any of the loans that were pending to them, and all those things. So we did a lot of activities for one of the municipalities, and we saved them thousands of US dollars in terms of money that was being laundered through this human manipulation. So that's some of the benefits that you can get from using RPA.